Céad Míle Fáilte, Marie O'Halloran.
Garth Magot, Patrick Connors Tatu.
No, there's nothing wrong with your radios, folks. We're speaking in Irish because I have Marie O'Halloran, my favorite Garda, back on the show for her third time. And it's not even St. Paddy's Day. How are you doing?
It's not. I'm doing good. So just for your listeners there, I said thank you to Patrick for welcoming me on, and I asked him how he was. So how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fabulous. So, Marie O'Halloran, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Born and raised in Ireland, primarily County Cork, correct?
Yes, primarily County Cork, and I've worked away in different counties, but I happened to return to my home county, and not far from where I grew up actually, and settled there then, and happily living in County Cork, down in Munster, down in the Republic of Ireland. So it's a great spot, even though we're in the midst of Storm Agnes today. So that'll give you a clue when we're recording this. So I have the blind down. So if you say there should be no trampolines flying past or anything, like the blind down. So yeah. So
well, hopefully we don't lose power. That's what I'm concerned about.
That's what I was worried about, but the connection seems to be okay so far, so good.
Okay.
But so yeah, back in the late 90s, then I joined the Guards, and I loved it. I did uniform work. I did special ops plainclothes work. Back in uniform again. Passed my sergeant's exam. Wanted to go to Cyprus on a UN tour duty, and I was about a decade into my service when I got injured on duty, and it changed the trajectory of my career completely. And while I was recovering, and we've discussed this before, Patrick, while I was recovering and kind of as an aid to get out of my own head, I rediscovered my love of writing. So that's roughly about 12 years ago.
Wow.
And it got me, out of my head, out of thinking, once I realized, will things ever be the same again? And I went to a workshop in the local library. Libraries are brilliant. Went to the workshop. Met a girl there who I'm still friends with. She's a writer herself, Mary Bradford, and she said to me, come into the library. I come in and write in the library, come in, which is something together, well, not as a book group, not as a writing group, but just side by side, brainstorm with each other and chat, and did poetry, plays, short stories that started getting commended in competitions, and then I turned to crime.
Oh, look at you.
Writing.
Very good. You didn't turn to crime. No, you're crime writing.
Yeah, crime writing.
So you got involved in law enforcement. How old were you?
There you go. You keep doing that to me.
I know. I shouldn't ask. I'm sorry.
I was in my early 20s.
Okay. Now in Ireland, is there a like in America, in most municipalities, it's 21. You have to be at least 21. Is that the way it is in Ireland, do you think?
No, 18.
18.
But there was a height restriction when I joined. And they've since raised the age bar, so up to 35, and I think they're raising it again. But it was a height restriction, which is now gone. So you had to be 5'8" for a female and 5'8" for a guy. So I'm 5'5" and 1/8.
So 5'5" was the cutoff.
Yeah,
for females.
Yeah.
Oh,
I might have lost a few centimeters. All right, my injury on duty, but maybe a few millimeters. But look, the height restrictions gone. They weren't going to kick me out at that stage anyway. I was doing too good a job.
So, you get the you pass. I imagine there's written exams, oral exams, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, at the time I did it, there would have been written exams and interviews. That has changed vastly again. There are situational questions now, and then you physical and interview. But there's a physical at the end of it. They changed the physical now because they did away with the height restriction. Medical, you've all that where they measure the height and all that stuff to see you standing straight and breathing. And it's down to Templemore in the college. It's a quicker turnaround for training, but when I was training, it was 6 months as a student, 6 months as a student in a station, and then you were back in for a period of time. So overall, it was about 2 years training.
Wow.
You were tested, what's called a test after a year. So you were a fledgling before that, but you were full guard, probationer before that, and then a full guard then after about 12 months. But you were still on probation. But they've changed it now, and we're of the class that can actually buy back that 6 months as counted as service now. So your service didn't start until you were attested.
Oh, wow.
You got your
Okay.
badge and you got your baton, and that was it. And your uniform, and you were out in the street.
Ta-da. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, there you go. Off you go now at the street, girly, and you can do your best.
Now, I think from our conversations before, it was Garda College, correct?
Garda College in Templemore, yeah. But
Yeah.
when I joke about going out in the street, but you most likely went with a more experienced officer. As a probationer, you would have anyway. And
Right.
I was fortunate enough to have joined when the cohort of guards were quite senior with 25 years plus. So with 25 years
Oh,
plus,
wow. Okay.
yeah, it was like you could stay in the college for years, but like colleagues like that will teach you so much. As long as you're open and willing to listen and learn,
Sure.
you will learn so much more than you ever will in books. The situational stuff, reactional stuff, just dealing with things, and and nothing is black and white. And I could safely say, after over two decades in the job, there are no two calls you'd ever, and you probably say the same, Patrick, there were no two calls that you would ever go to that you
No,
could say were the same. Now you see,
that's
you knew what laws you could use, but
right. You know what your rules and procedures, your SOPs,
yeah,
state law, federal law, blah, blah, blah. But like you said, that's the unique thing about law enforcement. Every call you go to, there's some little twist. There's some little thing
yes,
that is not in a book. It's, your greatest asset is your ability to think on your feet. And you have to. You
yeah,
got to make decisions, sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but
yeah,
hesitation is where you're going to get in trouble. And you just have to do something. You can't just
yes,
not do something. And sometimes doing something is walking out the door and saying, see ya, peace out.
yeah, yeah.
So you get
Agreed.
through all of that. What kind of equipment did they issue you and compared to like today? Do you know what the difference?
Back in my day,
Back in your day,
back in
you're a
my
salty
day,
vet now, yes.
yeah, you got actually, I've seen quite a chord of changes actually over the decades. So even the uniform changed. So we had a truncheon, I suppose is the best way to describe it. So you had a 12-inch timber stick, and that would slide into an extra back pocket that was behind your one of your thighs on your
Hmm.
trousers. So the uniform was equipped to take that. So then that changed to an extendable baton, and we had to undergo training for that. So then you could still put it into that baton pocket, but you got a utility belt that would adapt. It had a holder for it.
Hmm.
Then it was a stab-proof vest. We had nothing like that when I was trained first. The stab-proof vests came then. We got pepper spray then, and now there's the pepper spray, the extendable baton, the ballistics vest, the stab-proof vest. So when I went out, there was a baton.
That's it.
That's it. You have an
Okay.
ability to talk down situations. No, you still carry that ability to talk
Yeah.
down situations, but over the years and the change of equipment, even the uniform has changed. There was a big change in uniform there in the past 12 months. So instead of the wool trousers and the shirt, even when I went out first, the shirts we got as female members, they were 1 inch, 2 inch square pockets that you couldn't even fit a pencil sharpener into. You had no back pockets in your trousers. You had to go to stores and talk nice to see what they give you on the lads' trousers with the
Oh,
pockets
jeez.
at the back and the shirts that were big enough to hold your notebook. And then like that evolved. The shirts evolved, the
Hmm.
trousers evolved, and then they changed it completely to like cargo pants and polo shirt, and they updated the equipment basically to the tie's done away with as well. The tie, it was always a clip-on tie anyway to
Right.
avoid the risk of choking, if someone caught it. But even that, and you always had your tie and your tie pin, which was, and then you still have your dress uniform. So if there's ceremonial stuff to be done,
Sure.
you still have the wool trousers and the jacket and the belt, and your whistle and your tie pin and your epaulets. You still have the epaulets, but there has been a lot of changes over the years that I've seen. Even the computer system, when I went in first, like, there was no, I mean, it's widely known that the system is called Pulse, because a lot of writers would include it in their writing anyway.
Yeah.
It's the information system. But before that, there was nothing like that. It was like, like the old, how do I put it? It's like kind of, you could type one line and there was a blinker, and then it would answer you with lines of, it was kind of like the green cursor in the black background.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
It did have important information, but it wasn't what is there today. I mean, it was literally like, really old.
And I remember the dot matrix printers, the one that made that like cool noise.
We had those too. It was all upgraded to that, and there was fax machines as well until recent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but they're very secure.
We still use fax machines for certain things.
They're really they're secure, like, so.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right. Nobody's gonna hack your fax. So there is something to be said about that. But every district station,
make a great t-shirt.
Yeah.
Don't hack my fax.
Yeah, every district station had a fax machine, and certain things would have to go via fax. It's like, all right, whatever. Now, do guards in today's time, are they issued tasers?
The emergency response unit and the regional support units are armed, and they would have tasers, but they're still, there's obviously rules around using them, but they are the ones that have tasers.
So the people who have like guns also have tasers.
Yes.
Okay, so the people who don't have guns don't have tasers.
No.
Wow, that doesn't make any sense to me, but okay. It depends on the department. Everybody's like, well, why didn't they just use a taser? And I'm like, I did 25 years. I never had one. I never went to taser training, but like new recruits, I think within the last 5 years, all got taser trained when they were in the academy, but they didn't have their own taser. There'd be a pool of tasers, just like radios or rifles or whatever. There's only so many and so many cops for a shift. So not everybody got a chance. So, if I had 20, 25 cops out on the street on day shift, I would have like maybe 3 or 4 that were taser trained. And then maybe about 5 of us, 3 to 5 of us would have a rifle. And we'd also have a shotgun, but then we'd have the M4 rifle as well. We got trained up in that. So there's that. And the other thing I was going to ask you, how about body cameras? Do you guys have body cameras?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, there are talks about it. Again, it's one of those things that the people way above my pay grade will be deciding on.
Right.
But there's a few headlines at the moment, and there are talks, and they're talking about bringing in the legislation.
I think they have them across the pond. They have them in England, don't they?
I believe English, they do.
I believe they do. It's a love-hate relationship with body cameras with cops. At first, we don't want any change. It's like, no, I don't want this thing that recording me, and there was all kinds of rules. It's like, okay, if you were having a conversation with another cop, if you're having a conversation with your boss, obviously they don't want the body cam rolling while you're just, driving around with your partner, bitching about your wife or your husband, something like that. Nobody wants to hear that.
And they have to produce it in court as evidence. And
exactly. But
honey, I just have to tell you that we were having this conversation.
But the biggest, one of the biggest barriers for the body camera is like anything in law enforcement. It comes down to money. It's not just the body camera itself. It's the cloud storage, which becomes very expensive. When you have a big department, you have a ton of cops out there taking thousands of assignments a day. that's a whole lot of storage and moving pieces. And then you have to have people vet it. So say they're interviewing somebody or they're at a scene and there's juveniles, you have to take the part out where there's juveniles. If you know that person's a juvenile, they're under 18 years old, they can't be on there. So somebody has to go through every hour, every minute of that body, and you have to pay those people to do it.
Yeah.
So, politicians love to, like snap their fingers. It's like, poof, I want body cameras. And it's like, our budget's at a deficit right now. We have no money. Where is that going to come from? Yes, I would love to have all kinds of stuff, but and yes, body cameras have gotten cops into trouble, and sometimes deservedly so, but it's also saved a bunch of cops as well, as far as, being a boss, people would come to the front counter and make a complaint. And it's like, okay. And it's like, he called me or she called me X, Y, or Z at this traffic stop. Okay, perfect. I'll just pull up their body camera footage. You want to come back with me? Because I knew 99.9% of the time they're lying. They're just salty because they got a ticket. They were mad. It's like, okay. And then, it would de-escalate very quickly. And it's like, well, my feelings are hurt. And I'm like, okay, sorry about your feelings. And it's like, there's the door. And the second thing that really gets my goat with body cameras, and I've said this before, is juries, internal affairs, the chief, they shouldn't see things in slow motion for a recording, because that cop didn't see it in slow motion.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It should be in real time. Just like, you're running down the alley at 2:00 in the morning with a guy who has a gun. And there's this split second where either he turns and it's like, oh, that cop just shot him in the back. Why did he do that? Or the guy drops the gun as the copper is shooting, or, there's 100 different scenarios, but a jury, the district attorney, bosses, it's like, it's so easy to sit back and just play armchair quarterback and just critique them. They had half a second to make that decision. You have hours to look at this video. That's just not fair, and it's not right.
Yeah, it's not like the VAR in the soccer.
No replay. We don't get to do it over. So the Garda, they're obviously all over Ireland, so there isn't like a specific police force for each city or little town. It's all Garda. It's like a federal law enforcement, correct?
It's the one you've jurisdiction all over the country. It will be divided into districts and divisions, and but you would have jurisdiction. Like if you went to Mayo to help your colleagues, you have the same power they have there. It doesn't it doesn't stop or change at a county border. It's all the one.
Okay. So this being, it's a fairly large island. Did you have any saying where, you're a fresh graduate out of Garda College? Did you have input as far as like, hey, I live in Mayo. I don't want to be like in Cork, or, vice versa. Did they listen to that?
No, I didn't have a say. No, you don't have a say. It would depend on where the need arises. It would depend on where a certain aspect of crime has increased. Because often the benefit of new recruits going to an area means that the more experienced officers can concentrate on if there's an aspect of criminality that has increased in that area. So it just depends on the I suppose the conditions at the time and what's going on at the time.
Okay.
Where the need arises, it is about filling where the need is and putting people there. And it's not that the new recruits be straight in and doing kind of more experienced work, but them being there would allow the more experienced officers to concentrate on particular crimes that may have increased, or have the potential to increase, because their local knowledge will be good. And it's a very valuable learning tool as well to be partnered with experienced members.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Hopefully a good experienced member. Just because you have experience doesn't always mean that they're a good cop, unfortunately.
That's true.
So, you're a new cop, and how far away from home were you stationed?
When
Your first
I
your first
was
duty station?
I was a few hours from home. I did
Okay.
my student placement in Kilkenny City, and so I lived in the city. I really enjoyed it. It's a great
Okay.
city. Still is fantastic city. Small city.
Yeah. Okay.
And some people don't call it that but unless you've worked there, lived there, you kind of see, the
Mm,
city status it has. But I loved it. And then as a student, I was a student that time, and then I was sent to, we did traffic management operation around Christmas and approaching Christmas, called free flow at the time. That's not done as such anymore. So everybody from my phase was sent to Dublin and the various stations all over Dublin in order to ensure it was a traffic management operation. So
mm,
ensure it's called free flow. So the free flowing basically of traffic
sure.
because of the shopping rush and because of Christmas. So I was stationed in Dublin for a number of weeks. Actually, it was weeks more than months. And like that, getting accommodation for a few weeks is kind of tough going, but I did manage to get accommodation for a few weeks. But then on just, I think it was the week after Christmas that year, we got our, we'll say, full-time stations. So I was sent back
Okay.
down the country to Limerick. So
Okay.
yeah. So
Gotcha.
not to, yeah, that, like, far enough away from home, but not a million miles. Like, it wasn't a 3-hour journey or anything. It was more like an
Right,
hour.
right.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I got home for Christmas unless I was working.
Oh,
So
nice. So, looking back at your police career, was it what you expected? Like when you got into Garda College, looking back, what were the surprises, or what were some of the things that kind of threw you a little bit? It's like, wow, I didn't see that. I didn't see that coming. I didn't think it would be
um,
like this. Or was it like what you thought it would be?
I don't know. I think I went in with a completely open mind and no expectations.
Oh, okay.
And um it was just the volume of information, the learning, that I wasn't intimidated by that. I actually got very good marks because the learning was continuous assessment, actually, and it
Okay.
just, that method of learning suited me. um the physical aspect, I think, I had been training, but I mean, there was nothing like the training you were doing. You had to pass a run, and there was all that physicality. That was fine. We did self-defense training and stuff, but I actually continued it on when I went out,
Mm.
because you get basics down there. The marching, I think, was the most surprising. The amount of marching, and the examining your uniform and examining you I think it was Tuesday morning. We used to have to march out onto the square, and you'd be inspected, and
Uh,
your shoes would be polished, and for the lads, their hair would be cut a certain way, and
sure.
their be shaved. And one poor guy used to have a 5 o'clock shadow 5 minutes after
Yeah.
shaving. And God love him, he used to get into so much, you did shave, and he'd say did. So he'd have to shave twice, and then shaving twice, he'd be all cut. And then, the little dots of
Oh,
cut.
yeah.
And then he'd say, well, that's not good enough. And it was like, honey, you couldn't win. Like, so, yeah, so the dress was in the particular shoes. They had to be parade shoes on the
Sure.
Tuesday. I think there was one day I forgot my parade shoes and wore different shoes. Sure, they stood out like sore thumbs. So I got a bit of a rap on the knuckles for that. Walking around with your hands in your pockets. I was walking down the corridor with my hands in the pocket. This I can't remember what rank he was. Was he sergeant? He said, "You can't be going around with your hands in your pockets." And I said, "Okay, thanks for letting me know." I was probably just, in a world of my own. But it's surprising. I think I was like a sponge. I was just taking
Sure.
it all,
Sure.
you know.
Now,
Um, it was
looking
just
back looking back at your career, though, I mean, you've got a couple of decades under your belt,
Mhm.
with the police force. Was there any surprises as far as what you expected being a cop out on the street?
Um, I think I probably surprised myself at, would say, how efficient I was at, I suppose, negotiating situations and talking down, actually, believe it or not, and how people react to you and how you learn. Your approach is so important about how people
Sure.
react to you, and you are learning on the job, and you very quickly learn, like, your approach. And it's true what they say. I mean, if you approach someone like they're your mother, brother, sister, and the whole lot, you get a different kind of reaction. You approach people with respect, you get respect, and there's always, I always found there was a level you could converse with someone on. You just had to find it, and a lot of that was about listening and watching and learning. I think as well, I think as well, what surprised me, it used to surprise me how quickly you could tell. Like, this is what was amazing. I remember early on in my career, this more seasoned member said to me, you will know when things are about to kick off. You will know roughly what kind of a night you were going to have. And I was thinking, what? And of course, I realized what, after a couple of months, and I said, yeah, you get this instinct. And I used to say, yeah, but I have the extra woman's instinct. So I was doubly.
I've got the superpower.
The superpower, but he was right. And I remember you'd be in the city and you would get this sense of foreboding, or just like there was tension in the air and you couldn't quite put your finger on it. And sure enough, you would end up, getting a few calls to rouse on the street, or, stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting, that sense of, knowing, or having a good idea of. And there were some nights there was no predicting, or some days there was no predicting what
Right.
happened,
Yeah.
what would happen.
Absolutely. So as far as shift work goes, what shifts did you work? It was like on a seniority thing. Like for us, everything was seniority, where everybody starts out working at night. It was either midnight to 8 or 4 in the afternoon to midnight.
No,
And
everyone on the unit did the same. They did the same
Really?
shift work. Yeah, it used to be, when I was doing it, I'm trying to think, I think we used to do a week of nights. And it used to finish, by the time we'd finished the week of nights, I used to have to come home and do anything I needed to do at home for the whole day and go to bed that night. I'd actually have to stay up, because like, you were a week of nights. Then it changed to nights to lates to earlies. And but everybody on the unit did the same shift, and you did every second Sunday. Yeah, it wasn't about seniority. The only different shifts would have been if you were working in the office by day, or if you remember in charge of the station, or different ranks. The sergeant of the unit would work with the unit. They stayed the same hours and shift. The inspector would often work with the unit, or work during the day, depending on if they were defending cases in court or presenting cases in court.
Sure.
And mostly the superintendent and the chief superintendent would be usually there by day.
Now,
or if there was an event,
sure,
something going on in the city, they would be in the evening, probably to
interesting.
oversee, but not usually. You would just, but everyone did the same bar. You were assigned to a particular role. Crime office would work their particular hours, so all the crime office would work the same there of their ones, but they but usually it was the same. They usually worked by day, but they did night work as well.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, when you first started, you were single, right? You had no children and you were single.
Yeah.
Now, time went on, you became a mom, you were a wife, and you have other responsibilities. How did you juggle that with being on the job?
That was, because I suppose I remember at night, I'd be on night duty, and I would read a story to my son. My husband would ring me, or I would ring when it was quiet to say good night. If I was on nights, and I would read. He'd say good night, mommy. Before, he mightn't have had even words at that stage, but I'd say good night. Will I read the story?
Aww.
And I could read the story from memory. And it's actually, I know what story is. It was The President's Pigeon by Peter Donnelly, a fantastic Irish children's writer and illustrator. And not only that, my son said some of his first words out of that book, The President's
Now, what was the
Pigeon.
name of the book?
The President's Pigeon.
The President's Pigeon. Okay.
Yeah, and there
Very
was
cool.
illustrations of
Ah.
yeah, and but I could read The President's Pigeon to my son verbatim over the phone and do the voices. So, so when it was quiet, I would do the voices. And I
That's awesome.
remember one of my colleagues walked past and just looked at me, and I just went, "I can read the story to you if you want." You know? So, I think as parents and the lads who are dads as well, you just find your little ways to be there when you're not there.
Right.
I think it was, you just found a way. I think it's very, very hardworking Christmas and Sundays, when everyone is off and relaxing.
Yep.
Because your downtime might be midweek, whereas your family's downtime might be the weekend. But again, you just worked around that. You managed it and you did what you needed to do and all that. So, but yeah, that's the one standard thing. Yeah, I used to read it from memory. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I'd hang up and I'd I'd hang up the mobile, or I'd have to go because the phone is ringing, and then the place would be on crackers and I'd have read, like it's just things you find, to do.
Yeah.
But and he still loves that book, I have
Oh.
it there.
So how would you feel, or what would you do if your son said, "Hey, I want to be a police officer"? That's a tough one.
It is a tough one because you know yourself, Patrick, you can't unsee some things.
Oh, absolutely.
You really can't. And having been injured on duty, having dealt with traumatic and serious things, having gone and still in some ways going through, the aftermath of
Sure.
that kind of potential for injuries on duty and the mental health aspects of it as well. But then, I can't stop him doing, he's inclined to be kind of engineering, creative, like I wonder where he gets that, the creative side. But my husband is he's quantity surveyor trade, so he's in the building and technical assessor and energy rating and all that. So my son is interested in lorries and just how things work, and really interested in that. So I don't know if it ever, but no, I was contacted recently by a friend's son who's going into the guards, and I'll say, ask me honest questions and I'll tell you honest answers.
Sure.
And I think I said he said if there was one thing you would go back and say to yourself, and he said, what's the best advice you can give me? Well, listen, and I think he got in, since I was checking with him now. Actually, he was doing the interview at the time, and it wasn't to do with and it was funny, the questions he asked me weren't anything to do with the interviews or anything like that. They were all kind of more kind of questions around reactionary stuff and feelings around things and practical stuff as well.
Yeah.
And I was actually really impressed with his questions. But I said, there's only one of you, and never be so heavily dependent on a job financially that if your mental health and well-being or your well-being suffers, that you could not take a step back or walk away from it. And I said, if and it's a very important aspect, when you go into a thing, and it's yourself, Patrick, it's a vocation, and you tend to give your heart and soul to it. And then if something does happen, like an injury, if something does happen that you deal with something that's so traumatic that you need support with, just to be your support, that you can almost I suppose, what's the best way to describe it, that you're not so financially dependent.
Sure.
That you can't step back and take the time for yourself. And he took that on board and everything, but that would be the one thing. So yeah, I have had a few people joining at the moment, coming to me, and I've been quite straight to answer whatever they need to know.
Yeah, it's tough being a parent because you want better for your kids. You want better than what you had. And like what you said, I wouldn't give up my career for anything. I had a blast. There were bad times, and like you said, you see stuff that no human being should have to see.
You'll have to see, yeah,
You know,
and you can
and
never
you
unsee
know,
it.
heaps of PTSD, all kinds of, you know, stuff that, you know, from the department itself. You know, one thing that I tell people that are, you know, thinking about or whatever is what's sad to me and almost pitiful is people just love the job so much
Yeah,
and it becomes them, and then they don't know what to do when the job doesn't love them back.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
now all of
Oh,
a sudden,
yeah, absolutely.
you know, it's
Mm.
like how I poured my heart and soul for 20 years or 25 years or 30 years, and you're going to ding me for this. You're going to, you
Mm.
know, and they just can't comprehend. And sometimes they can't comprehend the fact that once you're gone, the department will be just fine.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody is replaceable from the chief all the way down to a recruit in the police academy. And
Yes.
it has to be that way. The wheels on the bus can't stop because, hey, you know what? I did
Mm.
my 25. Here's the badge. Here's the gun. See ya. You know, but there are people, and I worked with them. And I know you have too, Marie,
Oh,
that
yeah, but
they literally
absolutely
think
cannot
that
cope.
the world's going to
Yeah,
stop if they're not a
yeah.
cop anymore.
I found personally mindfulness, and that type of thing, because you look at what you have, you have control over. So you've no
Right.
control over how they react to you, or like that if they don't love you back. But personally, mindfulness, I found mindfulness-based well-being is very valuable, I think, to be able to just step back, take that breath, and be you, because you're you first before you're ever your profession, before you ever put on that uniform, before you ever go out to a call, and you'll be you after you hang that uniform off and hand back the badge and hand back the equipment
Yep.
and everything. And if you spend, as you said, your career being outside of you and not being with yourself, and often with mindfulness, I think people find when they sit with themselves, which they haven't done for a very long time, they're very
Right.
uncomfortable with what they find.
Oh, yeah.
And it's that facing that difficulty, and you're almost getting to know yourself again, because you could have been, depending on what rank you retired at, like you could have, and I think I've said this to you before, there is no rank on a headstone. I have never seen
Yeah.
anybody's rank on a headstone, and that is the reality. It'll be your family name, and
Yep.
the day you were born to the day you were died. So
Yeah.
there's
And not to
no
be all
rank on a
doom and
headstone.
gloom, you
Yeah.
know, I know people that have left police work or retired after their career and have thrived. They've done great.
Mm.
You know,
And I think
it does
especially
happen.
it does happen, and I think police officers and definitely guards, I think, and I've seen it among colleagues, they underestimate their abilities. They underestimate how they react when they go to calls. Like, I think, you're peacemaker, you're negotiator,
Yeah.
you know what to do in a crisis. Every call could be a crisis. You know who to call. You can do files, you can do prosecutions, you can bring things to court. And then you kind of go, but sure, what am I doing? And you do it so naturally. You underestimate the unusual ability you have to encompass all of that in your day's work, or in the ability you could run the gamut of all that in a day's work, or
Right.
over 2 days work, or a weekend, or a week. Whereas, like, and I think sometimes I've seen my colleagues underestimate their fantastic abilities,
Yeah.
their abilities to read situations, all that,
Yeah.
it says cause everything to do with that. But I do think I would say that would surprise me how some members underestimate their abilities. It's a
I
pity.
com I completely agree with you. So let's talk about your writing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're here today. We're going to talk about your writing. When did you first get bit by the writing bug? When did you have that inclination?
Well, I used to write when I was younger, so I was very good at
Well,
rhyme
you're
stuff.
still young.
I went, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I suppose, thanks for that, Patrick. That kind of rolls back now from the what age did you?
Exactly. I got to save myself here.
But yeah, I used to win, when competitions weren't, the obvious answer, you had to make up slogans and stuff like that. I was very good at winning those, because I could put stuff together very well, or my written word was quite good. And yeah, I did poetry and stuff, but like that, now you go into the guards, you forget yourself, or your external self. And when I was injured on duty, when I was injured in line of duty, like that's when I kind of discovered I need to find something that I can be good at, I suppose, and not knowing would I be good at it, but I just had to find something else that I could achieve at, and writing was it. And I started not knowing, as I said, it was therapy, it was a coping mechanism, it was something I was doing because I had a bit of an inclination to it. So then my poetry and short stories, I think, were started to get commended and get special mentions in competitions.
Now, this was going on while you're still on the job, right?
Well, yeah, still on the job, and I was recovering from the accident. I was doing all my physio and counselling and everything, and this was some little thing I had, and I kind of went, this was making me smile on days I was finding it hard to smile. I had a lot to smile about. I had survived, you know, and all that. I married to a wonderful man. I still am, thankfully. He still puts up with me, and amazing support in the aftermath of the accident, both physically and mentally, because I was quite physically damaged as well. But and just that's something else that made me smile, that just gave me something creative and new that I could find. You know, you create a sentence, you come to the end of it and read it back and go, that's not bad. How can I make it better? And then that kind of rolling on, you know, and the writing and the amazing people I met over the course of my writing, you know, that is, and the feeling you get when you're in a room with creatives. I mean, I'm just back from a writing residency, Notre Dame, if I pronounced that right.
Yes, you did.
Notre Dame Global Centre in Colmore Abbey. It was incredible, a writing residency there, and it's just being writers. It's just incredible, the creating and just that buzz and that energy.
Yeah, you know, writing can be a very solitary thing where it's just you and whatever, and it's so much fun to go to a conference or any kind of retreat or anything like that and chit chat with other writers, because there ain't a whole lot of us out there. You know, out of my like friend circle, I am the only one. You know, we're a bunch of knuckle dragging Neanderthals. You know, I go lift weights and ride motorcycles and do fun stuff like that. You know, and
smoke cigars.
And smoke cigars. Yes, absolutely. You know, nobody is like, yeah, I've got this deadline. You know, I got to do 1,000 words at least today. You know, and people look at you like, are you mad? You know, are you crazy? You know, so that's awesome. So did you ever have any formal like writing training?
I have done like short courses, or I've done editing courses, but I actually realized when I started writing, I'm very good at grammar. And I suppose like I've been 2 decades writing files.
True.
And you're reflecting a situation that someone who hasn't been in the situation, and you're writing reports and doing statements and the whole lot. But that meant nothing, because writing fiction is a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's a different beast, but it is good training.
But it is good training.
Yes.
And stringing a sentence together, and we'll saying what you need to say in a short space of time, getting a point across in a short space of time as well. That was good practice. But when it came to writing, it was no info dump, no too much detail, no kind of and as my writing developed, I realized as well I'm good at dialogue and stuff, and I actually start my writing, I suppose I describe writing like a building. So, you know, when you go to write first, it's the lift shaft. You know, you can't have you don't end up with the building. You know, it has to start somewhere. And you know, when people are saying, but you know, the stress of the end product. So your first draft is like the lift shaft going into the building, and the core of which everything is built around. So my dialogue is like the lift shaft. So I have my my characters chatting, and to get the nuts and bolts of the story out, and I build on those scenes then. But once I have the core of my characters chatting and giving the gist of the scene, what's going to come out of that scene, and how I need that conversation to go and where, because you know yourself, as we're talking here, even, you know, conversations go in a certain direction. So what purpose am I trying to achieve in telling this chapter and telling this story? That the conversation has to go, because you have your idea of nothing is in there that's redundant. You know, it has to mean something, it has to go somewhere. So there's all that kind of back and forth for. So that's my kind of lift shaft of the building. And then after that, then everything is built around it. So that's what kind of, so formal training, not really, is just, I suppose, just writing and writing. Like, this is my debut novel, but it's actually the 6th book I've written.
Right. This,
So,
people are funny, you know, it's like, oh man, they were an overnight success after 30
yeah,
years of trying, you
that's
know.
a long road to being an overnight sensation.
Yeah, exactly. So does writing come easy to you, or do you feel like it's a natural thing, or?
I think an awful lot. So writing, as you know, Patrick, it's not just sitting down the laptop or the notebook writing. Actually, I type quicker than I write, because of the damage from the injury and duty and stuff. My fine motor skills are affected, but so I type a lot quicker than I write. And I find that, yeah, I have to do an awful lot of thinking of the scene. So I think very visually. So usually if I go for a walk, I'm thinking visually, or in the shower, or doing something else usually.
Right.
And a scene is breaking through. And because when I sit down to write, then I have a general gist of the scene that I'm going to write, or where I want to take the scene. So I don't often write in linear order. I use Scrivener because I can switch it around. So I don't necessarily, because the sequel to this novel, I wrote the 13th chapter first, actually. You know, so yeah, it was a murder, and I kept thinking, this is not the start of it. This is not the start of it, you know. But I think that, okay, what has to happen in between? Where does it go? So I suppose that never leaves you. That idea of a new story, I don't think it ever leaves you. And while that goes on in my head, I'll be writing, you know.
Well, the book that just came out, book 1 of the Dublin Thrillers books, Deceit. When you were writing that book,
and I'm waving at a Patrick here.
Yeah, I know.
My crime writing pseudonym, Casey King.
Yes. So when you were writing this, you know, your main character is Danielle, correct?
Yeah, Danielle Luce. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a certain like actress in mind for Danielle when you were writing her?
I didn't really. I just had a real vivid vision of her when I was writing. And as you can see by the cover artist got her bang on. So I'm wondering, who do you think she looks like?
Well, I gotta say the cover is great. You know, whoever did your cover did a fabulous job.
I think the cover art by Nebosa Zorik. And I apologize if I have pronounced that wrong, but that's in the inside cover. So that is who did the cover. And actually the cover to book 2, the sequel called Exposed, has the same image but different coloring and a slightly different background. It just lines up so lovely together.
It does.
Plus the titles. So you have Deceit, and that's Exposed. And the third one has another name, you know, with F. So, you know, making the order of the series in kind of alphabetical order. So if someone comes and says, oh, which order is it in? Just actually, we're trying to kind of get it in alphabetical order a bit.
Since we're talking about Deceit, why don't you kind of give us a quick synopsis of what the story is all about?
Well, they did the blurb absolutely brilliant. So they say it's the story's oldest time. Girl meets boy, their marriage promises peace between their feuding families, then it all falls apart. So 10 years ago, someone tried to kill her. Danielle Lewis's marriage to Jason Flynn brings together the warring Dublin crime families. It should be a joyous union, but someone tries to take her life. So basically, that's the gist of the blurb. But the backstory is she was shot and lost herself and Jason's unborn child. And she then fled Dublin, and subsequently the detective who saved her life was also murdered. So knew information has come to light, which may solve who put the hit out on her and subsequently solve the detective's murder. The person who persuades her back to Dublin is actually the detective's wife. She's also a detective, and she also lost her unborn child in the aftermath of the tragedy. And that is where their connection is. Because
okay.
as anybody listening knows, grief does not discriminate.
Right.
So I had to find a bond with those two women that could break down a lot of barriers. So why would part of a criminal enterprise collaborate with a detective and marry the two? Their shared grief, and that's just the backstory. And I open with Danielle discreetly, as she thinks, coming into Dublin Airport. And she is bundled into a car and she does not know what's happening. And in the meantime, then her cousin Dean is making drug collections in around Dublin. So everything's going on. And it's a decade on since she's been in Ireland, since she's been back in the family. So the Lewis family's enterprise and criminality has escalated in a decade. Decade's a long time in criminality.
It is.
And the piece with the Flynns is really kind of just, it's liable to be fractured at any moment. So her return kind of sets some cat among the pigeons, some proverbial hitting the fan. So there's that, and there's all that old, politics surfacing, unresolved issues, and she's there trying to discover who has been involved in, who can she trust, and who's been involved in putting the hit out on her, and subsequently who possibly killed the detective.
So this came out September 21st here in the States. How long did it take you to write that book?
That book is written, and I have to give a shout out to my agent here, Kate Nash. I was pitching this, and we actually we had a Zoom call, and we had a fantastic brainstorming session on this, because I had written something, she was submitting it, and we were kind of having a chat about, where I'd go I'm just plugging my computer in, Patrick. I disappeared off there for a second.
That's okay.
Myself and Kate, we were having this chat about, where she goes, because Kate, in fairness, represents the writer as opposed to just the book. So she had submitted a book for me, which was universally loved, universally rejected. And I had written a thriller as well, and very hard to sell thriller for a debut author. So I was getting all this feedback back. So we sat down, and I said, look, can we get our heads together? And she said, of course we can. So she said to me, can you do gangland? Can you write gangland? And I said, oh yeah, watch me. Watch me. As I said, you hold my earrings. But I was there, and we tried to spit out a few ideas and the whole lot, and we'd arranged another meeting, and she said, come up with something there and come back to me. So I came up with an idea of this, about the collaboration between the criminal and the detective and the whole lot, and I wrote a sample piece, and she went, let's keep going with this. And
Sweet.
We kept going with this, and then there was deceit. I'd the first draft written in a few months, and I sent it off to her, and she gave me a bit of feedback on it, and then we were ready to submit it. So she went submitting.
Wow! So you wrote this book in 2 months, your first draft?
I wrote the first draft, I'd say 2 to 4 months.
Okay.
Give or take, and that was including a bit of brainstorming, but that was the first draft. So
sure,
there was a bit to be done. I would have sent second or third draft to her. She came back with some suggestions. She had an assistant in the office who was fabulous with suggestions as well, came back to me. So I did a bit of a rework on it, work up on it, bit of polishing. And it was literally ready to go then. So she sent it out,
So you set it out into the wild September 21st. It went live. How nervous were you?
Yes. Oh my God, so nervous. I'm trying not to curse here, Patrick.
You can say whatever you want.
I was so shitting it. I was just going. And then I felt relief, though. Yes,
it was kind it's a huge relief.
Yeah, I was. I kind of felt. I told you I was writing. You see, when I couldn't reach her for coffee, I was writing. When I couldn't do this, I was writing.
Sure.
And it was like kind of, because I love going to the retreats. I love going to launches. I love supporting other writers. And it was lovely to do that. And people would always ask me, and how's yours going? I've got another rejection, and I'm writing something different, and this is book 6, and the whole lot. So there was all that going on. It was
Sure.
all kind of not there yet, not quite yet, not there yet. So I think it was relief, but then, you know, it goes up on NetGalley and you dare read some of the reviews and you go, oh my God, you know, was it? And then you go, was it ready? Was it really ready? And like, you've had yourself and the editor and probably another editor and a proofreader and the marketing crew and the cover crew and Jaffe Books, and they're just going, and I'm like, oh my God, is there something I've missed, you know? And like, no, because they're an amazing team, they're an incredible
Sure.
crew, and you know, Emma, my editor, came back to me a couple of times with different things. We was check this and we double check. It was always double and triple checking, you know, and you know, and it was never there was always great kind of back and forth in the sense of, you know, flexibility. It was not this is happening and this is it, you know. There was always a bit of I suppose there was Irish slang and Irish dialect as well. And you know, just to give an example, right? I mentioned it before we were recording here. Danielle likes drinking dingle whiskey. And because I was asked by someone about something unusual that I researched, where I said, I have to taste the dingle whiskey to make sure what she'd like, you know.
Of course you do.
That really, because it really is, it's on the Wild Atlantic Way, and they're an amazing company, amazing distillery. And I had to put it in because I love going on the tour there and everything.
Right.
They're grown so well. And so I put in, but Irish whiskey spelled with an E. Whiskey,
okay,
as opposed to Scotch or American
whiskey.
Yeah, and let's just even small things like that, like between and I go off and be saying, well, actually, the E is NOI to distinguish it from Scotch, and she's probably going, this is just information I don't need.
Yeah.
She probably has a catalogue of going, stuff that Casey King has told me that I really don't need, but you never know. I might be on the chase in the future and might need to answer these questions, you know. And there was a bit of that, and it was checking, double checking, and proofreading. But
Sure.
still, it was still kind of, oh my God, is it ready? Will people like it? And as I was saying to you earlier, I have a lot of my friends supporting me and people that know me and know I'm writing. I will get this book to support you and thumbs up, well done, it's fine. And then I'm getting messages going, this is actually really good. This kept me up all night. This is a page turner. And I go, yeah, thanks for supporting me, but what did you think you were getting? You were getting a good product, like, you know, and that is like a double compliment. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, we'll support you, we'll buy your book. And actually, God, oh yeah, oh really, you know, and when is the next? And that's really lovely as well, you know.
Right.
And I think now I've settled into the idea of it being out there a bit more. It's out a week. And I'm settled into the idea of being a bit more, and you're checking the sales rank of the Amazon sales, and then you're going into the top 100 and you're going, oh my God, and a bestseller flag and all that, and one of the categories. And, you know, you're kind of, and then you watch it going down again and up again. And you're kind of, stop doing that because I'm working.
It will drive you crazy. That's for sure. But on the Amazon page, you know, USA Today bestseller Andy Newton says about your book, expertly crafted characters with a pacey, heart-pounding plot. How does that make you feel when you hear something like that?
Yeah, actually, my heart is pounding, you know, hearing it, because it's kind of like going, yeah, people are reading it and people are getting it, you know, and people are getting the characters. And my agent has said, I feel as if I walk down Dublin, I'm going to meet these people.
Sweet. You know? You're doing it right then. Now, book 2, Exposed, that comes out December 14th.
Yes.
Are there going to be any more books in this series after?
Yes, I'm currently writing another one.
Excellent.
So even though it's coming out December 14th, it sounds like, oh, I wrote it kind of quickly. No, that's not the way, because I signed this deal May of last year, and there were 2 delays in the publication date. It was meant to be out in April and then June. So while I was waiting for editors to come back, I continued writing book 2. So book 2 took me about 8 or 10 months to write. So even though it's out in December, which is quite quickly after this one, which is great because people don't need to hang around to know what happens next in Danielle's life. So that was written over the course of the 10 months, and that's where I'm doing, actually got edits back yesterday for, I sent the edits back yesterday for, but I'm actually working on the third in the series now. So Danielle is still telling me she wants to be written. So
Of course.
so I've picked up threads from 1 into 2, obviously. There's just a minor aspect in 1 that's become a major aspect in 2. So, and then there's something in book 1 that's come into book 3, and there's something in 2 into book 4. So that's the way I'm going to cross it over.
Okay. Now we have a couple of Facebook questions from the Cops and Writers Facebook group. Let's take a peek at those real quick. All right. Mick Halpin asks, Ireland is a dramatically different country than it was a few decades ago. What changes had you seen in terms of the crimes and criminals over the course of your career?
Definitely. Thanks, Mick, by the way, and thanks for your support as well. The amazing support that Mick has a Facebook group there for Irish crime writing fans. He's a moderator and administrator there, does a great job. The crimes are different. Even searching people, the different drugs that were there, that have, and the range of availability on the street. Before it used to be, like when I worked in the city first, there was no heroin on the street or anything like that.
Wow.
Believe it or not, there was nothing like that.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't much cocaine in the country. There was probably a bit of hash, a bit of cocaine, and that was kind of, it. Just, I suppose, the enhancement of the technology side of criminality. There was no cybercrime as such,
Sure.
Because it wasn't, we hadn't phones, mobile phones,
Right.
as such. And when you had them, there was no texting, there was nothing like that. And they were the Nokias, the ones we need to go back to now to get out of social media and switch off. But there was that, and so that kind of crime. Things that with stolen burglaries, you might see a different trend on things being stolen in burglaries,
Yes.
as televisions got bigger, they became harder to steal,
Right.
and that type of societal change, and just maybe the way you interact with people, how people are in person and dealing with on the phone, and almost, as police officers, you'd ring people to do with stuff or arrangements, or and people are so unused to taking calls these days. They're kind of shocked when people ring. It's that kind of thing would have changed, but definitely a different trend in crime. Different crimes happen different types of years. The seasonal crimes, believe it or not, and you'd know that as well from the year's work, and you'd know when you'd come into winter, maybe you might have more burglaries, or more the summer when people are away on holidays. But now people are advertising on social media where they're going, what they're doing it, and the amount of information that is available on people is actually so scary. The amount of information people give away about themselves as well. There was never that. I mean, it was all local knowledge, knowing who you knew, who you had in your community.
Sure.
There was no such thing as checking Facebook or Instagram or Twitter to find out who someone was, and they just the idea and the warnings that have come out then about don't be telling where you're going on holidays that you're going on holidays, because that'll increase the burglaries, and people don't realize how much they're giving away about themselves.
He's got a bonus question. What Irish stereotypes do you hate seeing in books, films, and TV? Who leaves the cliches behind and who gets it right?
Well, I thought of this. I was actually watching something last night. But in general, I suppose the Irish cliches are the kind of just as everyone loves the sing song and the pints in the pub, that kind of way. Well, not always. But when you see something or read something, and the detective thinks they're more senior to the uniformed guards of the same rank, and they talk down to them as if they're idiots, I absolutely hate that. I was watching,
Absolutely.
you know, and it's fine when they're briefing them, like the bill used to be, or you know, the whole lot, or the bill was a UK based program with the police over there. It was
Mm.
brilliant. Or I was actually watching Vera. I love it, absolutely love it. And Cleves wrote the books of the character on which the character is based. And like that now, the detective was saying, you're briefing the group, and he go. Then he was saying to people, you know, kind of like, you know, what are you doing standing around? And it's that kind of attitude that uniforms are only there to, you know, do the grunt work, you
Right.
know, and without their own separate intelligence, because you have to be in uniform first before you're a detective. You have to be uniform sergeant before you're a detective sergeant. So there's all that. So that's kind of the stereotype. But then you look at The Wire and McNulty in The Wire. You know, you got The Wire set in Baltimore.
Yes.
Yeah. And Idris Elba was in that as well. And the character McNulty was the hard drink and hard womanizing detective. But they did McNulty. He did that character very, very well. And it's that kind of trope of, you know, the hard drinking detective, and that's not always the case, you know. It's kind of, but when it's done well, it's done well. But
Right.
not every detective is like that. Not every, I mean, you have a personal life, but it can be a good personal life too, you know.
Right. And you know what Hollywood, you know, fails to see is, you know, I guess there's expectations from the people reading the books, watching the movies, etc. You know, they expect, you know, it's okay, it's the lone wolf detective breaking all the rules, you know, to get his, and he's the only one working on this case. And it's like, of
Yeah.
course not. But there's expectations and they're trying to match those up. And yeah.
And in my head, it's going, they'd be disciplined. They'd never get away with that. That's their
Absolutely.
David
They'd be
too.
fired, you know,
That's
or they'd
you
be going
know,
to jail themselves. They'd be going to prison. It's like, no, we
exactly.
don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's illegal. We can't do that.
But when
All
it's done
right.
well, you know, like The Wire is a good example now, and We Own the Streets was another one based in Baltimore a couple of years later. When it's done well, it's done really well, you know,
Yeah.
and the interactions. I'm trying to think. The Sopranos was mostly the gang stuff. They didn't have much interaction with the police. They had a few bits of interaction with the
Right.
detectives, and I thought that was really good as well. You know, the
Yep.
way that was handled and done. You know, I loved that.
Yes. I enjoyed
There are
that
those
too.
programs you wish that someone said to me they hadn't seen The Wire. And I said, you are so lucky that you were going to experience that for the first time. That and Breaking Bad. I was going, I wish I was back there.
Well, tell you what, we are running late here, as it's always fun talking to you, Marie, and just time just flies by, you know. So what's next for you? What's on the agenda? More books in this series?
Definitely. I'm working on a third in this series. As I said, there's Deceit, Exposed, and there'll be another one that I probably can't reveal the name of yet.
Okay.
But that'll be Danielle Lewis, what's happening to her down the line. I have a couple of other books in this series. I'm thinking overall with this series, there might even be 6 books in, I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
But I do have a psychological thriller set on the Wild Atlantic Way in Dingle. And it is the first line of it is, I will never forget the look on his face the first time he saw me in his dead wife's dress.
Ooh.
That is called What Came Before, and that is currently going on submission by my agent soon. So here's hoping that we'll have our Casey King written Danielle Lewis series, and Casey King will be publishing the psych thriller. So it's just the range. I've actually crime comedy written as well, but maybe the world isn't ready for that yet. But it's just I love that psych thrillers are the hardest thing to write, and I have this one written quite a while, but the time is right now to send it out. So that's going on submission while I work on book 3, basically. You know,
Okay.
I'm about I'd say 20,000 words into book 3. So
Okay.
I have an idea of where it's going to go, where they're at, what's happening. I had to do a list of who I hadn't killed off, and you know, who survived the first 2 books. and you know.
Okay. All right. Well, this is a good place for us to stop, I think. Where can people learn more about you and your books? Where can they go?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Let's Talk Crime, and I'm on Facebook as Casey King. And I think my handle there is Let's Talk Crime as well. Now, I don't have a great handle on Instagram. I'm getting there,
Okay.
but it would be Let's Talk Crime. We're so known for international coaching and mentoring. So they're all the socials really that people can get me on. I'm appearing at Murder One in Dublin at the Crime Writing Festival on the Saturday, I've just done a promo video for it, so I should know, Saturday the 7th of October, where I will be reading from Deceit, and books will be available for sale there. So if anyone's around John Leary, come on down to Murder One. There's a fabulous lineup there. That's the next thing, and I have an interview with one of the papers coming up soon, and yeah, after that, who knows?
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Patrick.